Americans consume roughly 20 billion pounds of bread every single year. Walk down any grocery store aisle in this country and you will find the same 15 loaves, same shelf positions, same smiling families on the packaging, same wholesome language printed across the front. Multigrain, made with real ingredients, no artificial preservatives. The words sound reassuring. The ingredient lists, if you read them, tell a very different story. Here is what the American bread industry does not advertise. The United States permits food additives in commercial bread that are explicitly banned across the European Union, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. Some of these compounds are used industrially in non-food manufacturing. One of them, still sitting on supermarket shelves right now, inside trusted household brand names, is the same chemical found in yoga mat foam. Another is classified as a possible human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. It has been banned in the UK, in Canada, in Brazil, in China. It is not banned here. None of these brands are required to put a warning on the front of the package. The disclosure exists only in the fine print most Americans never read. Today, we are going through 11 US bread brands you need to reconsider buying. This is not about taste. This is not about price. This is about what is actually inside the loaf sitting in your pantry right now and what independent research says about the ingredients keeping it there. We are naming every brand. We are naming every chemical. And by the time we reach number 1, the bread aisle is going to look like a completely different place. Let's get into it. Number 11, Sunbeam bread. Sunbeam has been on American supermarket shelves since 1942. The little girl on the logo has been smiling out from bread bags for over 80 years. There is a specific kind of brand loyalty that comes with a childhood memory attached to it, and Sunbeam has that in abundance. Parents who grew up eating Sunbeam buy it for their own kids without questioning it. That is exactly the kind of loyalty that never gets examined. Examine it now. Sunbeam's classic white bread contains calcium propionate, the preservative responsible for keeping the loaf shelf stable for up to 2 weeks without spoiling. Calcium propionate is legal in the United States and widely used across commercial bread production. But in 2002, a study published in the Journal of Pediatrics and Child Health documented a link between calcium propionate consumption and irritability, restlessness, inattention, and sleep disturbance in children. The researchers were careful about causation. The study was not enormous, but the finding was significant enough to trigger follow-up research, and enough for Australian bread producers to begin offering calcium propionate-free lines as an alternative to customers who asked. In the US, no such labeling or alternative has been introduced by Sunbeam. There is no asterisk. There is no flag. It is listed in the ingredient list in the same font, in the same order as everything else. The loaf also contains datum, diacetyl tartaric acid esters of monoglycerides. Datum is a dough conditioner that gives commercial bread its consistent soft texture. A 2002 animal study found that high-dose datum exposure was associated with cardiac muscle fibrosis in rats. The research has not been replicated in humans. The FDA classifies datum as generally recognized as safe. But the European Food Safety Authority has reviewed it with greater caution, and it appears far less frequently in European commercial bread formulations. Sunbeam is not the most alarming loaf on this list. But the gap between what the packaging signals and what the ingredient list contains is the story here. Number 10, Roman meal. Roman meal is sold as the thoughtful choice. The name implies ancient grain wisdom. The packaging leans heavily into whole grain imagery. For a meaningful portion of American shoppers, it occupies the mentally safer section of the bread aisle, the reasonable option, the responsible alternative to plain white bread. Here is the actual ingredient list. Roman meal's whole grain bread contains enriched, bleached flour as one of its primary components. Enriched, bleached flour is white flour that has been stripped of its natural fiber, vitamins, and minerals through industrial processing, and then partially resupplemented. Enriched, with a small number of synthetic nutrients to compensate for what was removed. The word enriched is working hard on that label. It does not mean the bread is nutritious. It means it was stripped and then partially rebuilt with laboratory vitamins. The bread also contains soybean oil. Soybean oil is one of the most industrially processed vegetable oils in the American food supply. It is extracted using chemical solvents, deodorized at high temperatures, and contains a dramatically high ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids. Chronic overconsumption of omega-6 heavy oils is associated in peer-reviewed nutritional research with systemic inflammation. That connection is well established. It is why many nutritionists and dietitians now flag refined soybean oil as a significant and largely invisible contributor to chronic dietary imbalance in the modern American diet. The broader problem with Roman meal is the identity gap. It charges a slight premium above budget brands. It positions itself as a better choice. But the ingredient list does not justify the health halo. You are paying more for a loaf that has many of the same processing shortcuts as the generic store brand sitting 2 shelves below it. Marketing is not the same as nutrition. Roman meal has been blurring that line for a long time. Number 9. Freyhofers. Freyhofers is a regional brand concentrated in the northeastern United States. It has been operating since 1884. The family bakery origin story is central to its identity. Long history. Local roots. A name that sounds like it belonged to someone's grandfather. That kind of brand narrative is extraordinarily durable. The production reality looks nothing like 1884. Freyhofers is owned by Bimbo Bakeries USA, the American arm of Grupo Bimbo, the largest bread company in the world by volume. The family bakery story is a marketing artifact. The production is industrial scale. The decisions about the ingredient list are made in a corporate structure, not a neighborhood bakery kitchen. And Freyhofer's white bread contains azotocarbonamide. Azotocarbonamide, ADA, is used as a bleaching agent and dough conditioner in commercial bread production. It is banned in the European Union. It is banned in Australia. It is banned in the United Kingdom. The EU classifies azotocarbonamide as a respiratory sensitizer, meaning occupational exposure during manufacturing is associated with asthma and respiratory illness. The World Health Organization flagged its use in food as a concern in 1999. In the United States, the FDA continues to classify it as generally recognized as safe at permitted levels of up to 45 parts per million. The EU permitted level is 0. In 2014, Subway removed azotocarbonamide from its sandwich bread formulations after a public campaign pointed out that the same chemical is used in the production of yoga mat foam. The story generated international media coverage. A fast food chain reformulated rather than defend an ingredient that most of the developed world had already eliminated. Freyhofer still uses it. The family bakery story is on the packaging. The ADA is in the loaf. Number 8. Cobblestone Bread Company occupies a specific shelf position in American grocery stores, above the budget loaves, below the premium artisan section. The packaging is deliberately rustic. The font looks hand-lettered. The name sounds like something from a neighborhood bakery on a cobblestone street. The price point suggests quality without quite reaching the premium tier. The whole presentation is calculated. None of it is what it appears to be. Cobblestone Bread Company is a mass production brand. The rustic aesthetic is a design choice engineered to activate associations with small batch, handmade bread. The actual production process is no different from any other high-volume commercial loaf. This category of brand strategy has a name in the food industry. It is called artisan washing, premium signaling packaging placed over an industrial product. Bread is the category where it is most aggressively and successfully deployed. The ingredient list includes both calcium propionate and monoglycerides. Monoglycerides are emulsifiers derived from fat, commonly sourced from hydrogenated oil, the same hydrogenated oil that produces trans fats. The FDA formally banned partially hydrogenated oils in 2018. However, the labeling rules allow a product to declare 0g trans fat per serving as long as the amount per serving falls below 0.5 grams. Monoglycerides are not counted in the trans fat line on the nutrition facts panel. They exist in a regulatory gap that allows trans fat-derived ingredients to appear in products officially labeled as trans fat-free. You are paying a premium for packaging that signals craft. You are getting monoglycerides, calcium propionate, and the same industrial production line as the cheapest loaf on the shelf below it. The cobblestone street does not exist. Number 7. Great Value Walmart. Great Value is Walmart's store brand. The pricing logic is simple. Lowest possible ingredient cost, highest possible shelf volume. Great Value bread sits at or near the cheapest price point in any Walmart bread aisle. For budget-conscious American households, it has become a default. In an era of sustained grocery inflation, it has become a first choice for millions of families who have no margin to make a different one. Here is what goes into bread at that price point. Great Value white bread contains azotocarbonamide. It contains calcium propionate. It contains datum. and it contains added sugars. Ingredients that do not appear on the front label as sugar, but show up in the ingredient list as high fructose corn syrup, dextrose, or both. The combination of azotocarbonamide, banned in the EU, the UK, and Australia, alongside high fructose corn syrup in a single loaf, represents the kind of formulation that would be illegal to sell in most European supermarkets. This is not primarily a criticism of Walmart. Walmart is using legal ingredients. Every single item on the Great Value bread ingredient list is permitted by the FDA. The comparison that matters is not whether it is legal here. The comparison that matters is whether the same loaf could be sold in Germany, in France, in the UK, or in Australia. It could not. Great Value is inexpensive for multiple reasons. Some of those reasons are efficient logistics and volume purchasing power. Some of them are ingredient substitutions that would not pass food safety review in most other developed nations. Both things are true at the same time. Shoppers who have no choice but to buy the cheapest loaf available deserve to know what is in it. Number 6. Stroman. Stroman is a brand most Americans outside the Mid-Atlantic region have never encountered. It is distributed across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Delaware, and surrounding states. Regional familiarity has kept it on shelves for over a century. If you grew up in that part of the country, Stroman sits in the same mental category as the bread that appeared in your school cafeteria. Stroman is also owned by Bimbo Bakeries USA, the same parent company as Freihofer's, as Nature's Harvest, as several other brands on this list. Bimbo's ownership footprint across the American bread market is one of the most significant structural facts about the industry, and one of the least known by the shoppers standing in the bread aisle choosing between what appear to be competing brands. Stroman's Dutch Country white bread contains azotocarbonamide. It also contains potassium bromate. Potassium bromate is a flour additive used to strengthen dough and improve rise. It is classified as a possible human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. It is banned in the European Union. It is banned in the United Kingdom. It is banned in Canada, Brazil, Nigeria, and China. In the United States, it is not federally banned. California requires a warning label on products containing it. No other U.S. state does. Potassium bromate residue in finished bread is generally low because it converts during the baking process, but generally low is not zero. Testing by the Environmental Working Group found residual potassium bromate in finished commercial bread products, and a regulatory system that permits a substance classified as a possible human carcinogen, banned in most of the developed world. In a daily staple food that millions of Americans eat every morning for breakfast is worth knowing about. Stroman is a regional name. The ingredients raise concerns that are not regional at all. Those are the first 6. Numbers 11 through 6 range from misleading health positioning to additives that are flatly prohibited in countries with stricter food safety standards. The next 5 are where the concern level increases sharply. Numbers 5 through 1 are the highest volume, most recognized, most trusted names in American bread, and the ones with the most significant documented ingredient issues on this list. Part 2 is where the names get familiar. Number 5. Nature's Own. Nature's Own is the best-selling bread brand in the United States. Not one of the best-selling. The single top-selling packaged bread brand in the country. It outsells Wonder Bread. It outsells Sara Lee. It has held the category leadership position for years. The name is doing very deliberate work. Nature's Own signals natural origin, minimal processing, ingredients that come from somewhere recognizable. The packaging communicates wholesomeness through visual cues alone before a single ingredient is read. Now turn the package over. Nature's Own honey wheat lists enriched, bleached flour as its first ingredient. Processed white flour, stripped and resupplemented with synthetic vitamins. The word wheat in the name refers to the grain category, not to whole wheat content. Whole wheat flour appears further down the list after the enriched version. The honey appears after sugar in the ingredient list. Under FDA labeling rules, ingredients are listed in order of weight. More refined sugar than honey. The name implies honey is the primary sweetener. The ingredient list says otherwise. The bread also contains datum, calcium propionate, and monoglycerides, a dough conditioner with flagged animal study data, a preservative linked to childhood behavioral concerns in Australian research, and an emulsifier that can carry hidden trans fat. Inside the best-selling loaf in America, the branding is polished. But the ingredient list is essentially identical to every other commercial processed white bread on the shelf, wearing a name designed to signal something it is not. Number 4. Sara Lee Classic White. Sara Lee is not just a bread brand, it is a piece of American commercial culture. Everybody doesn't like something, but nobody doesn't like Sara Lee. Decades of advertising have made the brand feel like a fixture of American life rather than a product competing for shelf space. That emotional anchoring is also what makes the ingredient list so disorienting when you actually read it. Sara Lee Classic White Bread contains high fructose corn syrup. HFCS metabolizes differently from sucrose. Peer-reviewed research has consistently associated elevated HFCS consumption with increased triglyceride levels, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and heightened insulin resistance. The American Heart Association does not recommend it. It is well documented across decades of nutritional literature, and it is inside America's most nostalgically trusted bread brand. The loaf also contains calcium propionate, soybean oil, and monoglycerides. The soybean oil is worth noting specifically because bread is a food most Americans do not associate with added oils. Its inclusion goes entirely unexamined by the average shopper. Most people buying Sara Lee have been buying it since childhood, or because their parents did. The decision is habitual, not examined. And that habit is exactly what the brand depends on to avoid the scrutiny the ingredient list would otherwise invite. Number 3, Pepperidge Farm. Pepperidge Farm built its entire identity around being different. Founded in 1937 by Margaret Rudkin, who began baking bread at home for her allergic son using stone-ground whole wheat flour and no artificial additives. Quality, care. A mother baking because her child needed something better. Every element of the founding story is genuinely compelling. Then, in 1961, Campbell's Soup Company acquired Pepperidge Farm. Production scaled. The product that earned loyal customers in the 1940s is not the product on supermarket shelves today. The farm is not part of production. The founding family is not making ingredient decisions. The origin story is in the marketing. The current formula is in the ingredient list. Pepperidge Farm's farmhouse white bread contains calcium propionate, datum, and soybean oil. Despite marketing itself with language like the taste of home, the formulation is industrial. The more significant issue is sugar disclosure. On some varieties, you will find sugar listed in the ingredients, and then, several entries later, dextrose, a second form of sugar, listed separately. Under FDA rules, they are counted individually, so neither appears as prominent as a combined figure would. 2 smaller numbers instead of one honest, larger one. What the brand makes today is not what Margaret Rudkin started in 1937. That is worth knowing before you buy. Number 2, Arnold Brownberry Orowet. This entry is technically 3 brand names. It is one company. Arnold is sold in the Northeast, Brownberry in the Midwest, Orowet on the West Coast. Different names, different regional identities, different packaging. The same bread, from the same formulations, under the same parent company. Bimbo Bakeries USA. Third time that name has appeared on this list, which is exactly the point. Count the brands Bimbo owns in a typical American bread aisle. Arnold, Brownberry, Orowet, Freyhofer's, Stroman, Nature's Harvest, Entenmann's, Ballpark Buns. The apparent diversity of choice is largely an illusion. Different labels, overlapping ownership, overlapping ingredient lists. Arnold's 12-grain bread markets itself as a multi-grain health choice. It contains datum, calcium propionate, soybean oil, and caramel color, an additive that makes bread appear darker and more visually associated with whole grains. Caramel color adds no nutrition. It adds a visual signal of nutrition. You are being shown what whole grain looks like. You are not necessarily eating the ratio the color implies. That is arguably the most calculated practice in the entire category. Shoppers trust the regional name they grew up with. That trust deserves a harder look. Number 1, Wonder Bread. Wonder Bread is not just a bread brand. It is a cultural object. The red, yellow, and blue balloon logo is immediately recognizable to virtually every American alive. In continuous production since 1921. It survived the Great Depression, 2 World Wars, and its own Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2012. The most iconic bread brand in American history. That cultural weight is exactly the kind of insulation that should make you read the ingredient list more carefully, not less. Wonder Bread contains azotocarbonamide, banned in the EU, Australia, and the UK. The same chemical Subway removed from its bread in 2014 after a public campaign identified it as the same material used in yoga mat foam. That story generated international headlines. Commitments were made across the food industry. Wonder Bread still contains it. The loaf also contains calcium propionate, datum, and monoglycerides. Some formulations include high fructose corn syrup and soybean oil. The natural nutritional content after industrial processing is low enough that synthetic vitamins, niacin, iron, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid, must be added back in to meet the FDA's minimum requirements for what can be labeled as bread. Let that land. The bread must be artificially fortified to legally qualify as bread. In 2014, Subway reformulated. In 2025, Wonder Bread has not. The balloon logo is iconic. The history is real. The ingredient list is also real. Let's run through what we covered. Number 11, Sunbeam. Nostalgia-wrapped calcium propionate and datem, never examined. Number 10, Roman meal. Enriched, bleached flour and soybean oil behind a whole grain identity the ingredient list doesn't support. Number 9, Freyhofers. A family bakery story, now Bimbo Bakeries, with azotocarbonamide in the loaf. Number 8, Cobblestone. Artisan packaging over an industrial product with monoglycerides in a trans fat labeling blind spot. Number 7, Great Value. Azotocarbonamide, HFCS, calcium propionate, and datum at the lowest price point in the Walmart aisle. Number 6, Stromin. Potassium bromate, a possible human carcinogen banned across most of the developed world, still in a mainstream U.S. loaf. Number 5, Nature's Own. America's best-selling bread, enriched, bleached flour first on the list, more sugar than honey in the honey wheat. Number 4, Sara Lee. High fructose corn syrup and soybean oil inside the most nostalgically trusted name in the category. Number 3, Pepperidge Farm. An extraordinary founding story that stopped being reflected in the actual product 60 years ago. Number 2, Arnold, Brownberry, and Orowet. 3 regional brands, 1 parent company, caramel color standing in for whole grain nutrition. And number 1, Wonder Bread. The most iconic bread brand in American history, still containing a dough additive banned in the EU, UK, Australia, and Canada. The common thread is not that these companies are uniquely negligent. The thread is that U.S. regulations permit ingredients in daily staple foods that most of the developed world has already decided don't belong there. That gap is not excessive caution abroad. It is a different answer to the same question about what should be in bread. Read the ingredient list. That is the actual product. Everything on the front is the story the product is telling about itself. If this video changed how you look at the bread aisle, drop a comment and tell us which brand surprised you most. We read every single one. And if you know someone buying any of these loaves without reading the back of the packaging, send this to them. That is what this channel is for. We don't just cover the news. We cover what the news isn't saying. See you in the next one.